Number 10. Tyler Hadley's party. Tyler Hadley had been talking about murdering his parents since he was a young boy. His parents weren't bad people. Tyler just had something unusual going on in his mind. As he grew older, he continued to fantasize about the ways in which he could dispose of his pesky parental figures. And in the weeks leading up to him actually doing it, he confided in his friends how it would go down. He told his pals that he was going to kill them and then throw a big party afterward. On the evening of July 16, 2011, Tyler swallowed 3 ecstasy pills and attacked his mother with the blunt end of a claw hammer. He then turned on his father when he rushed into the room and tried to help. Tyler beat Mary Jo Hadley and Blake Hadley to death with that hammer, dragged their bodies up into their bedroom, cleaned the blood from the downstairs, and then threw a party. About 60 people showed up. There was drugs and booze, and it was a total rager. But about halfway through the party, Tyler started telling people that his parents were dead upstairs, and his party guests left. Even his best friend, Michael Mandel, fled the party and called a crime hotline to report the murders. By the next morning, Tyler Hadley was in custody. Because Tyler was only 17, he wasn't able to be sentenced to death in Florida. But he was given life in prison without the possibility of parole. And in 2015, the house where Tyler had thrown his party was demolished. Number 9. Nina Silva. Nina Silva was standing in an alley outside a house where a big party was going on when a bullet from a drive-by shooting killed her. She and 3 others were struck by bullets at the house party in La Jolla in early July of 2019. The other 3 survived, though they suffered major injuries. One victim was even shot in the jaw and will likely be disfigured for the rest of their life. According to the prosecutors in the case, the party was only meant to be a small gathering of friends. But it drew some uninvited guests, who invited more uninvited guests, and it turned into a nightmare. And that was when Odyssey Carrillo Sellers, 18 years old, drove past the house and fired a volley of rounds into a crowd at approximately 12:30 a.m. Odyssey was apprehended some days later following a high-speed police chase. Nina was only 6 days away from massively changing her life when she went to that party. The 20-year-old woman had been planning to move to New York for a better future. The arrangements were made, everything was ready, and then she went to a house party to say goodbye to her friends. She had no idea it would be the last thing she ever did, as she became the victim of indiscriminate violence. Number 8. Screwdriver Birthday. On March 21, 2021, Australian teenager Jason Langens attended his friend's 16th birthday party. It was a house party, but not too wild of an affair, just some friends hanging out and drinking. Jason, who was 17, found himself in the middle of a violent altercation between the party guests and 3 males nobody there knew who had come to crash the party. These party crashers arrived just as the festivities were winding down and had gone to that house with no other intention but to cause problems. When Jason put himself in the middle of the action, he wound up getting beaten. He was hit over the head twice and then stabbed with a screwdriver. 3 weeks later, after what must have felt like endless suffering, Jason succumbed to his injuries and died in the hospital. His family made the heart-wrenching decision to turn his life support off and allow their child to rest. Shortly after that, homicide detectives tracked down the young man responsible for the murder. He hasn't been named because of his age, but he and his 2 pals have been apprehended by the police and should be being brought up on charges soon. Jason was described by his mother, who desperately fought back tears in front of reporters, as a beautiful boy. A boy who had been ripped from their lives too soon, leaving a big hole in his family's heart. Number 7. Deadly Pittsburgh House Party. Early in the morning on April 17, 2022, gunfire erupted at a house in Pittsburgh. 2 young people were killed, 8 others were injured, and most of the rest ran screaming into the night, afraid for their lives. According to the Pittsburgh police, the party was happening inside an Airbnb rental. Undoubtedly, whoever was renting the place had no idea there were over 200 underage kids inside their house, drinking themselves into a riot. It's not clear exactly what started the shooting, but police do say over 50 rounds were fired inside the house. Pistols and casings from rifles were found at the scene, and the evidence outside stretched across several different blocks. According to eyewitness George Stevens, who was smoking a cigarette outside a bar next to the rental property when the shooting broke out, he at first thought there were fireworks. Then he saw kids scrambling out of the house like rats running from a burning building. We don't know who the shooter was, and the police have yet to make any arrests. They apparently have some suspects, but that was the last update we got back in April. Number 6. Trashing the place. A gang of brazen teenagers broke into a house worth $8 million in Florida, and threw such a crazy house party somebody could make a movie about it. These teens were so confident that they could get away with throwing the biggest party of the century that they posted flyers around Santa Rosa Beach. They even advertised the shindig on social media. Of course, the owners of the house weren't home when the party happened. In fact, the house is owned by extremely wealthy people and only used as a vacation property. Hundreds of teenagers couldn't have cared less about the owners when they broke in, trashed the place, and left it in utter disrepair. According to Corey Dobridnia with the Walton County Sheriff's Office, they arrived early on Saturday morning after neighbors called to complain about the noise. When they arrived, they found about 200 kids drunk and disorderly in the house. In Florida, it's illegal to throw what's called an open house party, meaning a huge party inside a residence. It's also illegal to break into a house. That's called burglary, and so everyone in the home was immediately guilty of 2 crimes. Even if the police don't want to charge 200 kids as criminals, the owners of the house have been extremely pushy with ensuring every last attendee of that party is charged with all possible crimes. The police are now going so far as to subpoena Snapchat conversations just to make sure all the kids who partied that night get in trouble. Number 5. James McGrath's murder. James McGrath, a teenager from Connecticut, was killed following a brawl at a house party in May of 2022. James and 3 others got stabbed by a maniac with a knife at what the police described as an alcohol-fueled house party. James was only 17, a junior at Fairfield College Preparatory School. He was a lacrosse player and had a bright future ahead of him. But something went wrong that night amongst the drunken teens, and a total of 4 victims ended up stabbed and sent to the hospital. James was the only one who lost his life. A teen from Milford named Raul Elia Val has been charged with murder and first-degree assault. The police learned that minor conflicts between the rival schools led to the fight breaking out at the party. It had started earlier at a different house party, with kids from James's school crashing the scene. After they left, kids from the first party followed them to the second party, and what followed was a group brawl. About 25 teenagers were fighting outside the house in a giant pile of sweaty bodies and swinging fists. And that was when Raul Val pulled out a pocket knife and stabbed James in the chest. Number 4. Home Alone. In 2010, a Facebook post about a party resulted in roughly 100 teenagers showing up uninvited to a house. The Abbott family's home in Massachusetts quickly turned into an underage rave. The family had taken a trip to Paris and left Alex, their 18-year-old son, in charge. Alex posted the details about the party on Facebook, and that was when the hordes of guests started flooding in. The amount of damage done to the home quickly amounted to about $45,000. The doors were smashed apart and ripped off the hinges, the windows were shattered, the floors were ruined, holes were punched in just about every wall, and the carpets in their house were soaked in urine and blood. It was as if Alex had let a wild troop of monkeys into his house. Anything of value was stolen, and the teenagers even peed in all the drawers and on Alex's parents' clothing. 4 teenagers were arrested by the police, and the rest got away with enjoying the party of their teenage lives. They even bragged about it on Facebook after, calling themselves the Homewrecker Crew. Number 3. Madagascar house fire. A house party in Madagascar turned into a scene of horror when their house caught on fire and the flames trapped everyone inside. According to the local reports, the party began as an innocent gathering of about 40 people. But then, halfway through the night, the embers of the fire, which had been used to cook food for the partygoers, somehow sparked back to life and started a fire. Within minutes, the fire had spread through the entire house. Flames took over the top floor, caused the roof to cave in, and 39 people were killed. Every last partygoer ended up eaten by the flames, including 17 children. The only person who escaped the disaster was a 14-year-old boy who jumped out the window, only to die later at the hospital from injuries he sustained during the fall. Fire crews in the village of Ambalavato said nobody could leave through the front door because they were all panicking trying to get out. They only managed to crush each other against the only exit. Panic and hysteria trapped them inside, and soon the roof came down on their heads. Number 2. Bad breakup. On July 30th, 2016, students from the University of Washington hosted a house party in the small community of Mukilteo. That's in a suburb of Everett, Washington. About 20 university students were in attendance, including Alan Christopher Ivanov. At first, Alan appeared to be just an ordinary guest. He arrived at about 10 o'clock and wandered about the party. After a little while, he retrieved a rifle, crept to the side of the house, and hid beside a wall. His hiding place was discovered by a young man named Jacob Long, whom Alan immediately shot dead. Since the jig was up, Alan got to his feet and started shooting. He hit Will Kramer, who managed to escape by crawling away through the bushes. Then Alan shot Jordan Ebner outside before making his way into the house. Alan moved through the patio doors, found his primary target, and shot her multiple times at point-blank range. Some of these shots hit Anna Bui in the face, blowing her skull into fragments. Next, Alan moved upstairs and shot at 2 men he found. Each managed to escape alive. At this point, Alan realized he was out of ammunition and fled. He was discovered 90 minutes later by state troopers over 100 miles, 161 kilometers away. Alan was motivated to commit this unspeakable act of terror because of a breakup that had just gone down between him and one of his victims, Anna Bui. He was furious because after the breakup, she moved along in her life and he was still stuck by himself with no new girlfriend. This made him so angry that he went and purchased a rifle a week before the party, bought a second magazine the day before, and even read the rifle's manual to make sure he could use it properly. Alan Ivanov was given life in prison without the possibility of parole and is still locked up at Stafford Creek Corrections Center. Number 1. Police settlement. Deja Hurd rented an Airbnb property to celebrate her 21st birthday with her friends in Cartersville, Georgia. It was the last night of 2017, and about 65 young people showed up to do some serious celebrating. But the night ended with 65 partygoers in handcuffs, even though according to prosecutors, only one of them broke any laws. In fact, more police broke the law that night than the people they arrested. Somebody complained about a loud party, and this prompted the Cartersville police to go investigate. They entered the home illegally without a warrant, searched dozens of people, and found a single ounce of marijuana ditched on the ground outside. Since nobody would claim it, the police decided they would arrest them all and charge each person with possession of a small amount of marijuana. In other words, split the ounce into 65 separate charges. This proved to be the wrong move on the part of the cops since they've been sued for making wrongful arrests. The police now have to pay $1 million split among the people they wrongfully put in handcuffs. Especially since they didn't just put these people in handcuffs. One of the partygoers said they were locked in wrist and ankle restraints, then carted away to the jail like they were animals. even though they hadn't done anything illegal. Would you rather be stuck at a house party with a psycho on the loose, or trapped on a cruise ship with a murderer? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe, and see you soon.